There we go. All right. So last time we, in our curriculum document, we made our way um, all the way in Roman numeral one, all the way down to letter J. Right? Everyone agreed? Okay, good. So, and that is sort of this current, where are we in Jewish history, the history of the Torah and Torah scholarship, and what has happened in contemporary Torah scholarship? So, I would say a couple of trends. One, the Achronim wrote a lot of commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, as we talked about last week. Um, the last person to write a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, it was the Mishnah Berurah, um, Rabbi Kagan, who died in the early 1930s. And since then, no one has done that. So somehow that genre has like passed away from history. And now the more current style of writing about halakha is the compendium, okay? Like almost like an encyclopedic treatment of a given topic. So there's a very influential Shmirat Shabbat Kilchata, the laws of Shabbat, uh, right? A sort of a 1 or 2 volume book that is a comprehensive treatment of a topic, culling from all different sources, contemporary writings, older writings, putting it all together, editing it in a really like easy, clear way, and ta-da, there you are. There you have like a treatment of halakhic topics. So that's like, that's a genre that began in the mid 20th century and has become increasingly popular. And if you take, for example, Rav Melamed, whose books we have um, bottom shelf there, the Tanine Halacha, each volume is a topic. And so he is a comprehensive treatment of, I don't know, a dozen or 20 halachic topics, beginning to end, like that he reorganized in his own way how he thinks it should be organized, but not tied to the Shulchan Aruch's order in which this topic is treated, his own like sort of re-edited, version. And that's there are many others who written that. So that's sort of how we seem to be writing. Maybe because the commentary literature has gotten so vast, there was a need for it to be kind of re-distilled, etc. Um, and of course, the other genre that continues is responsa, like questions and answers, that really from the earliest, from the period of the Gaonim, we had questions and answers, and that has continued. And there are contemporary scholars who are still publishing Sheilot Utshuvot, questions and answers on halachic topics. It's a great way to earn your place in posterity, is to ask a question of a rabbi who is publishing Sheilot Shivot. I already did that once. Rabbi Yossi Rimon published a volume. His first volume of Sheilot Shivot came out, and it was his responses to questions from congregational rabbis in North America during COVID. And I got a few questions in there, and he lists at the beginning of the book all the rabbis who sent him questions, and there it goes. There you go. That's it. Um, and there are many other rabbis who are continuing to publish. Rabbi Linzer, who's visited a few times, he's publishing a volume of Sheilot and Shuvot. I don't know, I think I make it in there. I'm not sure my name is in there, but I definitely have asked him questions I think that made it into his book. And Rabbi Katz, who's coming in 2 weeks, he is publishing a volume of Sheilot Shuvot, although I don't think pretty sure I didn't make it into that one. But anyway, it's a way to make your way, kind of, if you can't write, the answers, you can at least write the questions. And so She'elot Utshuvot, literally questions and answers. Sometimes the acronym for She'elot Utshuvot is Shoot, Shin Vav Tav. So sometimes it's called the Shoot literature, okay, or Shutim for She'elot Utshuvot. And also, I guess the other sort of, I'd say another sort of in terms of like the history of the Torah and Torah commentary, we're also continuing to write commentary on like older books, scripture and even the Talmud, and we have new methods of doing so, which I would say are, it's sometimes been called the new school of Pshat, right? Pshat was that medieval method of plain sense interpretation of scripture. So the new school of Pshat is that same endeavor, but with like using tools of literary analysis. Like for example, like you know what a chiastic structure is. That's something chiastic structure is something you notice in like it's a literary tool of like A B A like chias, the Greek letter X. So A B A. So like people who are into literary, they love to find chiastic structures when they look at texts, and they see it in all sorts of stories in the Torah, and also it's like okay, so that's like like Rashi didn't know about that chiastic structure, but like that's a tool that or we now have like more. Like we discovered in the 20th century, we discovered Ugaritic, which was an ancient Semitic language. The Ugarites were like lived near the ancient Israelites, and so we discovered their literature, and so we now can use it for like various more advanced philology and like interpreting words in the Torah. Like we now have this whole other ancient Near Eastern language to draw upon as we are sort of doing that, right? So that's that same endeavor, but with like these newer tools that we have at our disposal, and that's like I think a very creative and flourishing like form of modern Torah scholarship. Another important difference, um, I think in a significant systematic way in starting in the late 20th century, mid 20th, I guess, depending how you tell the story. But women are Torah scholars now, and that wasn't really true in like pre-modern times. There were here and there, and like throughout Jewish history, there were some women who managed to get substantial Jewish education, text Jewish education, but it was there are individual women whose names we know because it was so uncommon and so unusual. And uh, schools for Torah, schools where girls learn Torah and where older women could learn Torah is a like the first, in Germany in the 19th century, and then the Beis Yaakov movement was in the early 20th century, and sort of a Beit Midrash where women could learn that was didn't happen until the 60s and 70s, and so that's a movement that still is in many ways in its infancy, but it's a movement that has obviously been substantial, and so there are now um, uh, you know. There are books of Torah scholarship written by women, which was really almost unheard of until very very recently. Okay, any questions on what we've done? Anything in section one that we've done in the past 3 weeks? Any questions that I can answer from people here or online? Okay, so should we continue? Should we go on? Okay, Roman numeral two. Okay, oh well, all right, Shabbat. Okay. Shabbat is a really, really significant, like component of Jewish life, and I would just say it's maybe one of our most significant contributions we can make to modern civilization. I think the lifestyle of a observant Jew is most different because of our Sabbath observance, and that therefore that means this could be the most significant thing we have to contribute to civilization, right? I think um, maybe I'm overstating things, but I'm not sure. Um, uh, so let's sort of I don't want to say about that. So one, it's like what it's like so much to say. Like I would just say I'll tell if you haven't observed Shabbat, like I'd say it's really hard to it can be hard to imagine. It seems almost impossible because it's so different. But I think um, if you do it and try it, I think it's really infectious and delightful and really enhancing of life in so many ways. And I think and it used to be that Jews weren't the only ones who knew that at one point, right? Like the Puritans came to America because they wanted a more rigorous and austere Sabbath experience than what they could find in England, and so like this country was built by people who wanted to keep Shabbos in a very meticulous and strict way. But we've America in general has sort of strayed away from its roots as a people who cared about Shabbat, and so it's sort of left to us to carry that flame. So what Judith Shulevitz, the journalist, wrote a wonderful book about the history of the Sabbath as an idea in Western civilization and in American life. It's really excellent. One of the points she makes, just like time, is that we often treat time as undifferentiated. It doesn't matter when you do something. It's one hour is the same as any other. And we see how we work at night and on weekends, and we shop at work, and we sort of this blurring of and Shabbat's like, no, actually, time is a substance that has real difference. And there's some interesting psychological studies that show that there is like unemployed people also are like less, are kind of like a little sad on Monday morning, right? Because all their friends go to work, and so they're alone, right? And so like just being on the same schedule as a community is actually really that. It's not enough to. It's not just how many hours are you working. It's like, do you have a communal time of like resting? Synchronized resting is a really value added proposition. Um, yeah. The book is Judith Shulevitz, and I think the book is called The Sabbath World. Um, and yeah, it's well, I really enjoyed it. Um, the Torah describes Shabbat in a number of ways, a number of places. Shabbat's introduced in Genesis as in Genesis, God rests, right? V'yishbot b'yom hashvi. God rests on the seventh day. Um, but the day itself, as like Yom HaShabbat, that's when we rest in Exodus. So it's our resting that gives the day its identity and its name. In Exodus, Shabbat is also about remembering the Exodus and our freedom from slavery. And so Shabbat is about commemorating God as creator and humanity as not being creators. And it's also about celebrating our freedom from slavery, that as free people, we control time. As slaves, we didn't. And so it's about understanding that we independence from the economic life, that there's a day when we're not subjugated to an economy, where we a day when we're not trying to be creators. We recognize that we live in a world that God created. So one day out of 6 days, we take part in economic life and we're building and doing and buying and selling. And one day we step away from economic life and we're just like human beings with our own inherent dignity that's separate from our role as economic participants in the economy. And one day out of seven, we remember that we live in the world as it was created rather than shaping it and manipulating it. We sort of just inhabit the world. Um, Shabbat later on in Exodus interrupts the construction of the Mishkan, the construction of the tabernacle, the temple. And so the rabbis derive the prohibited labors of Shabbat from the, or connected it to the labors that were entailed in building the tabernacle and building the temple. And so Shabbat then therefore is like this is Heschel's phrase, a sanctuary in time. So in sort of we no longer have a temple, we no longer have this type of sacred space. We do have sacred time, and that really, so that's he calls it like a cathedral in time. Other civilizations built cathedrals. We have Shabbat as our cathedral in time, which is a beautiful, beautiful image. So, and the other thing, the last thing I'll say before we, like a big picture before we dive in, is that the laws of Shabbat, the positive commandments and all of the many, 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 many detailed restrictions of Shabbat are necessary to kind of really carve out a space that we can fill with all the activities that we are and like the sacred good things, right? Like the thing you're trying, that sanctuary in time, that cathedral in time, that availability for our community and for ourselves and for God, and right, all of that is only created through I believe, the very meticulous, careful, and um, numerous restrictions and laws. I think without the structure that the law provides, it's very, very hard to like really carve out time. And you see this, I don't know, like um, um, yeah, it has been a couple of years since I heard him talk about this, but the journalist Ezra Klein used to speak about how he really wished he could, he wished he could like, spend one day a week without using using technology, but it's really, really hard because without, how can I take my kids to coordinate a play date with my kids' friends if I can't call them? And how can I, soccer practice and if I'm driving here without a phone, that's not so safe. And I have to, yeah, and then once I'm on my phone, then I get the push, the texting from, so it's really, really hard to have a day that's different, have a day where you're really present and available without the restrictions. And he acknowledges that. And he says also it's really hard to do it without a community joining you. If everyone's doing it, it's like really, you know, yeah, right. Just that, like you can just knock on your friends. You want to play it for your kid, just knock on your friend's door because else no one's going anywhere. Everyone's here, right? Like no one's driving off to see the grandparents. No one's going to the mall in the afternoon. No one, right? Just everyone is available for so walk down to that, knock on the door. If they're not there, oh, I guess they're a different friend. You walk to that friend, you knock on their door, or maybe it's at the park. You go to the park and then you see them and you just find people. You meet up in shul. Everyone's just available for each other in that way. So, what are the mitzvot of Shabbat? So, any just questions or comments based on my sort of waxing philosophical? Okay, so the Seder, fine. So the Torah in Exodus, want to introduce the Ten Commandments. It says, remember the Sabbath day, Zachor Yom HaShabbat. In Deuteronomy, when the Ten Commandments are repeated, it says, Shamor Yom HaShabbat. You should protect the Sabbath day. And so, broadly speaking, Zachor is the remembering the Sabbath, the mentoring of the Sabbath are the positive mitzvot of Shabbat. And the Shamor is the protecting the Sabbath. The um, those are the negative the negative commandments for Shabbat, and like all of the prohibitions. And so like let's dive in. And they're both necessary. So Zachor. So positive mitzvah Shabbat Kiddush. Kiddush is a I don't know, it's not something that you would necessarily know about from the Torah, but it's a mitzvah that the rabbis kind of define and develop. We we declare the day to be holy by reciting a blessing while holding a cup of wine or grape juice. And even though the day has an inherent, maybe you would say, ontological holiness, we endow it with holiness through our declaration. Like Y over wine, what's symbolic of I don't know, an important statement, an important event, has wine. And certainly in pre-modern times, wine was both something that, product of agriculture, so it's the bounty of the land, nature, but also a lot of human ingenuity. And when it wasn't safe to drink water, it was also, how you drank, what you drank. So that's good. I don't know if this is a familiar ritual, right? So the mitzvah, there's a biblical mitzvah to kind of to sort of recite the words of declaring today is a Sabbath day and it's a holy day. The form it takes is probably a rabbinic formulation of you recite the words of the Kiddush while holding the wine and then drink a little bit. You don't one person can make Kiddush for everyone who's sitting at the table, so each person doesn't have to recite it himself or herself. And likewise, only one person has to drink. You don't know. So if one person recites and drinks, everyone else has to. I don't know if you've been to a Shabbat meal, you've seen this, right?
I have. But I was gonna ask,
Yeah.
is it like a customary choice, I guess, if say one person makes the kiddush and then everybody else drinks? Is that
That's very common. It's very common. Yeah. Because it's also like the Kiddush is like the start of the meal. You generally, all things being equal, we don't eat or drink on Shabbat until we've recited Kiddush. And so it's like the start of the meal. So either you can pour a little bit of your grape juice to everyone at the table, or you pour a little bit of your wine to everyone at the table, or everyone, which at some point at some point, like 20 years ago in our house, we switched over to everyone pours a little bit of wine or grape juice into their own cup, and then one person recites, and then everyone drinks from their own cup. Which is
So I've seen it a handful of different ways.
Yeah, it's all, but that's all fine. And actually, only one person has to drink.
Okay.
So and you just have to hear the words and say Amen, right? That's a concept in Jewish ritual that one hearing it is the same as doing it or saying it. So if the mitzvah is to recite something, you don't actually have to say the words yourself. You can listen to somebody else say the words, and you can say Amen after their words, and that is the same. That's the same mitzvah.
Which is that kind of the same structure or thought process behind lighting the candles for Shabbat as well? Like
candlelighting for Shabbat, like one person can do it on behalf of the household. That is correct. Because the mitzvah, candlelighting is later custom practice. We'll get there. We'll get there. Okay.
That's okay.
We'll get there very, very soon. Any other Kiddush questions? Yeah.
Is it gendered in the sense that it's only effective if a man says it?
No, Kiddush is an obligation upon everyone. Every Jewish adult has to recite Kiddush or hear Kiddush recited. And men and women have equal obligations in Kiddush. The language in the Talmud is everyone who's obligated in the prohibitions of Shabbat is obligated in all of the positive mitzvot of Shabbat. I would say it's more traditional for men to recite Kiddush, married men in a household, like the man of the house to recite Kiddush. That probably reflects kind of sort of patriarchal, who's the head of the household, or who is like kind of ritual responsibility of the household kind of thing, and also who is literate. And so there is In the Talmudic times, if like a woman made Kiddush, it was a sign like, the men around her didn't know how to read or were sort of ignorant. Uh, and so there are many who feel that in a time of math literacy, there's no need to limit it in that way. But the truth is, it's still more common for men to write, so yeah. Yeah.
Is the obligation, can you fulfill the obligation by saying Kiddush in a language other than Hebrew?
You fulfill the obligation of saying Kiddush in language other than Hebrew. The answer is yes. You can fulfill almost every obligation in any language. God speaks any language. Oh, no, sorry. It has to be a language that you understand or Hebrew.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, good question. Yeah. Great. Any other Kiddush questions? Okay. The cup, if one it could be a little fancy and strict, don't use a disposable cup for Kiddush. I think it should be that's like I don't know. That's one of my meaning no, it shouldn't be like should not be disposable. It should be like a real cup, It doesn't have to be like super fancy. It could be a regular glass, but it should be a intact cup. You're doing something, you're doing a ritual, endowing the day with sanctity and showing its significance. Don't use a disposable cup. The There's also a Kiddush we make Shabbat morning or before lunch. That Kiddush is sort of interesting. There's no blessing for that Kiddush. It's just we recite verses about Shabbat, and then we recite the blessing for consuming the wine or grape juice itself. Whereas Friday night, there's like two blessings: the blessing for the wine or grape, and then there's an actual blessing of the Kadesh Shabbat, like the Kiddush blessing. That's only a Friday night because that's when we're inaugurating Shabbat. Shabbat day, it's already inaugurated, so we're not saying that, but we still start our eating on Shabbat day with wine or grape juice, again, symbolic food of significance of this meal, significance of this day, and we recite verses about Shabbat beforehand. I keep saying wine or grape juice. Grape juice is a modern invention. Grape juice didn't exist until pasteurization. Grape juice will ferment very quickly, and it was only in I think the early 20th century that grape juice as a product was invented. So yeah.
Since it says fruit of the vine, does it have to be the wine or grape juice, or could it actually be grapes, for example?
No. Grape regafen is the blessing for wine. Maybe it's also the blessing. Let's say it's the blessing for grape juice as well. But grapes are grape eights. That's the blessing for all fruits. It's grape regafen is a wine blessing. That's like the most refined grape product. There's an interesting question when it comes to olives. We don't know, is it the olive or the oil that get like Brepria eights is do you say Brepria eights on oil or on olives? What is the most substantial significant are they grown for eating or are they grown for oil? And that's a dispute in so whatever. We generally I think say eights for the olives, okay, but that is a question that Talmud raises. But for wine, there's no question. Brepria gafen is the literal meaning of the words notwithstanding. It's the blessing for wine.
And can it be blackberry wine?
No, it has to be wine from grapes. Yeah, good question. Now, you could make Kiddush also on, if you don't have wine, you can just make Kiddush on your challah. And so you would just say Hamotzi and then the Kiddush blessings. That's not so common. Whatever, wine is pretty, wine or grapes is relatively easy to whatever, but I have seen that done. And there's also a category called Chamar Medina, like the drink of the land, which is like the symbolic beverage in the place where you live that people drink even when they aren't thirsty, as a way to endow a gathering with importance. And so maybe that would be tea or coffee, maybe Coca-Cola, I don't know, but like so for that might also be an option, but you wouldn't say Brei Coffee, you would say Shahakol in that case. I once advised someone who had gestational diabetes that she should make Kiddush on tea. So, any other questions? Keep them coming. Hamotzi is the blessing for bread. Okay, number 2, Havdalah. Havdalah is the like the sandwich, like the yes, exactly, right. There's a better word for it. There's like the
Bookend.
Bookend, thank you. It's the bookend. It's the bookend. Okay, so Kiddush is when we are welcoming Shabbat in. Havdalah is when we are escorting Shabbat out. So it's the ritual that marks the distinction between Shabbat and the rest of the days of the week. It's also recited over wine or grape juice, and it's accompanied. It's actually three blessings. It's the blessing, we say blessing of Hagafen, over the wine. Again, as we do for many rituals that we want to endow with importance, we say a blessing over bisamim, over smelling fragrant spices, because we're sad that Shabbat is ending. We want to like kind of give ourselves a little encouragement as the week begins. We say a blessing over fire, because during Shabbat we can't light fire or manipulate fire. When Shabbat ends, we're allowed to do that again. So we say, we hold a torch up and we look at the torch and say a blessing over fire. And then finally, the blessing over separation itself, this act of distinguishing between Shabbat and the days of the week, between day and night, between Jews and non-Jews, all of these distinctions in the world that are significant and mean something. And so we are sort of reaffirming our belief in distinctions as Shabbat ends. Havdalah, there's a different question whether women can make Havdalah for men, because as I said earlier, everyone obligated in the prohibitions of Shabbat is obligated in the positive mitzvah of Shabbat. But is Havdalah a positive mitzvah of Shabbat, or is it a mitzvah after Shabbat? And if it's after Shabbat, maybe it's a category called a positive time-bound obligation, and there is a presumption that women are exempt from performing positive time-bound obligations. So maybe Havdalah is one of them, and so women should make Havdalah, but it's, I would say, a little more fraught for a woman to make Havdalah for a man, because he certainly is obligated and she maybe isn't. Is it a Shabbat obligation or is it a post-Shabbat obligation? Okay.
I have a quick question.
Oh,
That's
well,
a
yes, hello, hello.
Hi,
Who said
how
that? Oh, hi, Juana, hi.
So Shabbat, we light 2 candles,
Yes,
and for Havdalah, we do a special candle that is like.
correct.
So
Yes.
is there a reason why it's different and braided?
That's a great question. Yeah, so the Havdalah candle is generally braided. It doesn't have to be braided. It does have to be at least 2 wicks that are joined together. If you don't have a special Havdalah candle, you can take any 2 candles and put the wicks together so the 2 wicks form a big flame. Because it's the point is it's like should be like a torch, like a big flame, and then the smallest big flame is 2 wicks together. So braided candles are very common, but minimally take 2 candles together. Whereas the Shabbat lights, the point is just to have really, this is a good segue. The mitzvah is that our homes should have light on Shabbat. And this actually goes back to ancient times. Like the Torah says, Lo tivar esh b'chol mashvetechem b'yom HaShabbat. You shall not have fire burning in your homes on Shabbat. Which sounds like it means we should sit in the dark on Shabbat. And there were a lot of these sort of ancient Jewish sects in the time of the Second Temple period who thought, Lo tivar esh, you should not have burn of fire in your homes. You should have no fires burning in your homes on Shabbat. That seems to be what it says. But the oral tradition that we've been talking about for the last few weeks says that no, it just means you're not allowed to ignite a fire or transfer fire. But you can have a fire that you lit before Shabbat illuminate into Shabbat. And so not only can you, but you should. And because, to show that we believe in the oral Torah, and we're not going to follow this literal interpretation of Scripture. We believe in our tradition that interprets what it means. And so, lo tuvaru eish doesn't mean don't have fire burning. It means don't ignite a fire. But also, Shabbat is supposed to be a pleasant day. And the others, they sat on Shabbat in dark homes and ate cold food. And we figured out ways to have warm food and sit in the light. And so lighting candles right before Shabbat starts, it's a way to show we believe in the oral Torah and we believe in this rabbinic tradition. And also it's a way to to show our belief that Shabbat is supposed to be a joyful day. So the Shabbat candles are symbolic of enjoying Shabbat. They're symbolic of or enabling that there should be peace in the home on Shabbat, which can either mean a married couple sits at the table and they can see each other and they look at each other and that's lovely and romantic, or it means that because you have light in your house, you're not tripping and hurting yourself, by stumbling around the dark. Okay, either way, say either way, you can fulfill that with light. Now, our homes, we have probably the candles are probably not the major source of light in our homes. You have your electric lights burning. Okay, that's the mitzvah actually. And probably when you light your candles, you should have in mind like this mitzvah that I'm doing really is that I have the light on in my bathroom and in the hallway, in the dining room, and so I'm going to be able to avoid tripping and hurting myself as I walk around Friday night, and that I'll sit down with my family, the members of my household, or even just by myself, and have an enjoyable, pleasant meal. Okay, so that is all under the rubric of Oneg Shabbat. That Shabbat should be, which is number 4 here, an enjoyable day. So it's good food, and the house should be lit, and right, just really a delightful, right, a delightful day. Okay, um, right, good food, good, and kavod Shabbat, number 3. That's all the things you do before Shabbat to prepare. So that's cleaning your house, cleaning yourself, getting dressed in nice clothing, cooking the food. That's all kavod Shabbat. Whereas Oneg Shabbat is the actual enjoyment of Shabbat itself. So it's supposed to be, again, like a really enjoyable day. So it's a holy day, it's a sacred day, a day with extra time for prayer and Torah study, but also should be a really fun, enjoyable day again. Which means, again, with some people that's meat and wine, some people it's salad and seltzer, whatever. But whatever it is for you, okay, it should be really a delightful, enjoyable day, and particularly, again, like good food, clean house, clean body, clean clothes, light, with people you like, okay? And that's our vision of Shabbat. And these are the mitzvot of Shabbat, kavod Shabbat, and oneg Shabbat. Okay, questions, comments?
Just a comment.
Yeah.
I think that the kavod Shabbat is part of a sort of a tradition, or I'm not thinking of what the right word is. And that I know my grandmother always cleaned, or she got obsessive about vacuuming before Shabbat. And then my aunt did the same thing, and now I'm doing the same thing.
yeah.
And it's like, it's part of the
Yeah,
ritual.
totally. Absolutely, yeah, and that's supposed to be, right? Again, that's part of, again, we're supposed to, again, like really invest in getting ready, anticipating the excitement, and that includes cleaning the house, and that's like the special tablecloth you use for Shabbat. It's I was in high school, I had special, my favorite, undershirt that I wore on Shabbat, whatever, okay, whatever, whatever's gonna make you feel fancy and special, like that's, um, your Shabbat shoes, your, whatever, again, really, I think to invest just should feel really, really special. And again, includes, the cleaning of the home as well. You buy, if you ever been in Israel, on Friday, every street corner has people selling flowers and and wine and cakes, and it's really, there's like just a real sense of just going out and buying the things you need and preparing the things you need to should be a really, really enjoyable, delightful day. Okay.
I
Okay,
have
that
a
is,
question.
yeah.
Want to know, for Shabbat, like for example, cleaning, or cooking, this should be stopped before the start of the sunset,
Yes,
right?
yes, 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 correct. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. All of these things are that entail forbidden labor, which we'll get to in part letter B, have to be right. So you got to finish it before Shabbat. So Friday is a really busy day. All the cooking, all the cleaning, all the shopping, everything, it all has to be fit in, and then those candles are lit and it's done. Okay. So, which is hard to figure it out. That's a hard part. Like that's not easy, but it's, especially these winter short Fridays, like, kids go home from school, they're like rush to the shower. Everyone has to shower, get the clothes on, out of the oven, like they're, yeah, yeah.
Especially in the winter. Like, can we cook like if it's not perishable on Thursday?
Yes. Yeah. 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 Totally. Yeah. Of course. Of course. Yeah.
Or is that myself?
Yes, yes, yes. You can cook on Thursday. You cook on Thursday. Yeah, we usually we do most of our cook on these short Fridays. We do a lot, especially and when we work on Friday, so we do a lot of our cooking Thursday night. Thursday night. Yeah, 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 yeah. We do a lot of work, and so you can even cook a large batch and put it in the freezer, and then all you have to do is defrost it on Friday. Yeah, but some things happen. Even if you're cooking on Thursday or you're cooking a month in advance and stocking and you have a chest freezer. You're still doing something on Friday. You're still, defrosting. You're still setting the table. You're okay. You're opening the wine. Okay, right. You're doing a little sweep. Okay, so you're getting it in. Okay, and somehow, no matter when Shabbat starts, early or late, I always need about 10 more minutes. So yeah. We'll get there next time. Okay, good question. We'll get there. But that an Erev allows you to carry inside the boundary. One of the prohibitions of Shabbat is you're not allowed to carry anything on Shabbat. An Erev is a boundary around a neighborhood in which carrying is permitted, but it has to be checked every week to make sure it's intact.
That's gonna be my question, because I was in New York the other weekend and we were walking around and
Yeah.
we actually saw the man putting
Oh, wow.
the Arab up, and we just like sat there, we're just like, oh my gosh, because you can't see a single thing, it's just fishing line.
Yeah,
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, and he is walking through Central Park, just
fixing it.
yeah,
wow.
and we're just watching in awe.
Yeah, it's really cool. If you don't know what to look for, you will never see it. If you know what to look for, you start noticing them in places where you go. Yeah,
See it, like I
Yeah.
see this man physically holding it, and he is like reeling it in the entire time, keeping it taut.
yeah, really cool.
I could not see it. I'm like, where is it even going?
The Manhattan Erev is actually, I think, perhaps the most elaborate Erev in the world. I think it's been written up and actually, and they're actually upgrading it with like electronic. It's going to be fully electronic so that every segment will be monitored electronically. So if anything goes down, it'll instantly be notified and et cetera, et cetera. It's like very, and it's like, I think it's like $100,000 a week to like, but it's used by a lot of people and it's a very, very complicated, dense urban environment. So it has special rules and it's not, in a suburban neighborhood, it can be easier because you can use existing power lines, utility lines to make your perimeter. You have fences, you have gates and things. So it's a little bit easier sometimes to construct. And anyway, we'll get there. Oh yeah, okay.
But checked weekly.
Should be checked weekly because a lot can happen. You can have a storm branch can knock it down. Also, depending on the size of the neighborhood, the likelihood of some construction project impacting the area is quite high, depending on the size of the area, right?
Is there a stipulation of like how high it needs to be or anything like that?
There are many stipulations.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, huh.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was initially you can carry if you're in a walled city, and this is like a poor man's walled city, or
It's a little more complicated than that. It's I guess all right. All right, we'll go there. Okay. You're allowed to carry in a private domain. You can't carry in a public domain. You can't carry from a private domain to a public domain. So the initial is, so what about a semi-public domain? And the initial example of that, which have two homes that share a courtyard. So that's a rabbinic prohibition. You can't carry in the courtyard between two homes, even though it's enclosed in a wall. But if I take some food that is collectively owned, and I say, well, I'm going to keep it in my house, and we both own it. So obviously, you can come in and take the food. And since you can come into my house, to take this food, so I can go to your house, and also, right, because we're using the food that belongs to collectively to merge our two homes with a common courtyard. And so that's literally Erev means to combine. So two private domains with a shared courtyard. We can use food owned in common to merge those two domains, provided they are encircled in a boundary, and provided they're like two private, two Jews, who both are invested and believe in this. So now I have a whole Jewish neighborhood of like 10 homes with a little alleyway, and the alleyway is not really closed, but I can just symbolically put a little wire or a thing, and close off the alleyway. And so now the alleyway is cut off from the public domain, and it's all Jews who live in this little alleyway, and there's a border, like the walls that surround the homes and their yards, and then the alleyway itself has a little symbolic archway that I've made with a piece of wood or with a fishing line, whatever. And so now it's closed off, it has a boundary, and all of us in here share food. We're all Jews who observe Shabbat, and that's how it works. To expand that to a city, so you have lots and lots of fishing wire to enclose a huge, huge area. And since we're not all observant Jews you have to rent from the government the right to carry. Since the police have access to every home inside the Erev, you can go to like your police commissioner or go to the mayor and rent the right to carry within the boundaries of the Erev, and they give you that right, and that is in place of an Eruv being exclusively Sabbath observant Jews who are, merging their domains. We don't have to merge our domains because the government has given us this right to carry in place of all the Jews in a neighborhood, merging their courtyard. So the Eruv is a box of matzah in the Aron Kodesh in the small shul. That's the food that's owned in common. The right to carry was, I don't know, in 2005, whatever, I don't know, whoever it was, the city council or whoever it was, maybe some of the federal government, gave us a 99-year lease to carry within the boundary of the Eruv, wherever it was. And then the boundary demarcates it, and that is like small symbolic boundaries, like little archways and gateways that are constructed from utility poles and some wires that we strung up and existing fences and things like that. So that's, yeah.
The whole island of Manhattan, is that?
No, because it has to have, so some people thought so, and maybe, but the problem, you need to actually make sure that just an island is not sufficient to be a demarcation. It has to have either a seawall or a very, very steep, kind of shore. And it wasn't necessarily the case that every single, all of Manhattan is enclosed in quite that way. In Chicago, our Eruv, I was very involved in the Eruv in our shul in Chicago because it was like our shul's job to, like, we built it, we maintain it. It required a fair amount so months would go by with nothing whatsoever, and then it would be months where every single week there was like some repairs that had to be done, and and I was involved in inspecting it and maintaining and improving it. Like it was a lot of work. So I knew it very, very well. And the entire eastern perimeter was Lake Michigan, Lakeshore, which had a seawall for the entire length of the Eruv, with one exception, which was a doggy beach. But the doggy beach was itself enclosed in a fence. So the Eruv, as doggy beaches often are. So the Eruv perimeter really was the seawall and then the fence that surrounded the doggy beach, and it continued to the seawall, farther south. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So who determines how big is the air roof? I mean,
The
how
one
do
who,
how
the
big?
one who designs it, is the one who determines, and the perimeter is going to be determined by a number of factors, like where do Jews live, whom we want to include in the Eruv, what are the shuls that are paying for the Eruv that we're gonna, make sure they're inside the Eruv. And then also a lot of it is going to be pragmatic, like what we want to use as much existing infrastructure as possible to include. So for example, our Eruv here does not cross the
I know.
Beltway.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
Because you have an existing perimeter along the Beltway. You have those, what do we call them? Those like big walls, right? And fencing and walls on the south side, inside part of the Beltway.
Mm.
They're like also there's sound barriers, right? It's really those sound barriers, right? So since you have like this entire perimeter of your neighborhood enclosed already in a wall, let's use that. And then it's just a question of like where else what can we attach to that to include? So that's our that. So sometimes it's easier to make an Eruv much, much larger because you expand outward until you find an existing physical barrier. In Chicago, we had the Lake Shore, so that was easy. And then we went west until we had the metro tracks, this commuter rail line, so which was probably farther west than almost anyone in the community lived, but it just made sense to go west that far until we had an existing barrier rather than pay a lot of money to string up wires, which we want to avoid doing. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. No, I love talking. I could talk about this for hours. I love it. Okay. Thank you. Let's pause here, and then next time we'll pick up. So we're not meeting next Monday. So in 2 weeks we'll pick up with letter A, number 5 on our curriculum sheet, and then we'll go on and begin the prohibitions of Shabbat, which will take a while because there are many of them, and we should go through them.
Minutes for anonymous questions.
Oh yes, thank you for reminding me. Yes. All right, I'm going to shut off the recording, and then we'll have 2 minutes for anonymous. Okay, well, let's see what happens. Okay, let's turn off the recording. Okay.